Okay, well, welcome to What's Broken. Nothing's really broken yet, but we're looking at doing a little bit of preventive maintenance. Gonna pop off the transmission cover on this 2001 Mazda B4000 4x4, essentially a Ford Ranger. It's my new-to-me truck. I don't know, maybe a couple months ago. I'm sitting with 143,000 kilometers on it, so about 85,000 in miles. And I thought, you know, the tranny fluid doesn't look terrible, but it doesn't hurt to service it, and given that it's 20 years old, I'd like to keep it in as good a shape as possible. The next issue will be trying to figure out where the engine oil's leaking there. Anyhow, I'm going to get set up here and start loosening off some of these bolts. I'll try to put you where you don't get splashed. Start with a 15 mil, and that's way too big. Not a 14 either. Yeah, 13's the number. Just going to break them all loose for now. Okay, I do believe they're all loose. And the oil is starting to drip. Can't really tell if I got you in the picture or not. Kind of want to get the back undone and then slowly loosen them to the front. I've got the truck up on a set of ramps or blocks. And hopefully the majority of it will drain into the bucket. Here we go. Everything's going to get messy now. Just keep pulling bolts out until they're all done. kind of get in behind the cat. Pull out the hard to reach ones, then I'll leave the two outside ones for last. Maybe it's not the cat, whatever this is. Expansion tube or something. Oh, come on, baby. Whoa! Forgot to break one bolt loose. Oh, it's going to be an ignorant one to get at. Well, it wasn't that bad after all. Might have to use my swivel to get that one back in. And a little heat shield has to be somehow popped out of the way. I think I'll need a pry bar. I think that's going to be fun to get back up in there. Oh, for golly sakes. Okay, I had the camera out of the way while I got the pan off because it didn't kind of come out as easy as it maybe sometimes does. Anyhow, it's down. I'm going to take this bolt out, looks like a 10 mil, and get the filter down. Then clean things up and hopefully fit it all back together. The tough part was the part that was hanging up was there's this little heat shield between the exhaust and the side of the transmission, and these clips were there were just not quite enough room to get it out. Plus there's a little 10 millimeter nut that has to come off a bolt. So it took a little finagling, but got it off. I think I may take a side grinder and trim these little extra parts of the top tabs off, because the clearance was just such that it made it really hard to get this this heat shield off from around the pan. Speaking of the pan, I thought there were supposed to be a couple of, there's one, magnet. You know, it doesn't look terrible. It's still got a bit of a red hue to it. It's not too gray. There's a little bit of silver filings here, but overall I'd say that the transmission's in pretty good shape. I do have a bit of a clunk when I leave a stoplight or whatever after I've applied the brakes and I go to take off again, but I think that might be, after doing some reading on the internet, that may be related to the yoke and spline on the rear drive shaft needing grease, and this particular truck doesn't have a grease zert, so I may have to drop the drive shaft and grease it up, and maybe while I'm doing that I'll drill it out and tap it and put a grease zert in just for that purpose. Yeah, but overall there's a bit of shiny stuff, but it's not, as some would say, it's not terrible. Okay, I'm going to get this cleaned up and wash all this out with brake clean, clean up the edges a bit, and then get under there and button it back up. First I got to pull that filter out, so I'll bring you back. So the filter's out. Everything looks to the naked eye to be pretty clean. I'll probably spray that down with brake cleaner before I reassemble. Looks like the gasket, it was a cork gasket and it came off fairly cleanly, or clean. So I'll go check and make sure the replacement parts are the right ones. So something a little interesting, this port has the O-ring on it, but this port, which was in there, there's no O-ring. I installed the new ones on this filter already. I am going to check the drain bucket for it, but given that this was pressed up into the body of the transmission, it shouldn't have drained out. It's just strange that it's not there, or maybe never was. All right. Well, I searched the drain bucket and looked a few other places and couldn't find that O-ring, so I guess I assumed that they just never neglected to put it in the first place. I'm going to take this and clean it up, use a little brake clean on it, and then we'll start to put this thing back together. So to help hold this gasket in place, I'm going to use a little bit of black silicone. Not a bunch, just a dab here and there. Put it around the outer edge because I do not want to run the risk of getting any of it into the transmission. Just need a little tacky surface to help hold this gasket, because the gasket was all bundled up in the packaging, so it's not really laying flat and it won't really stay in place. So I'll let this kind of tack up and set for a couple of minutes. And in the meantime, I'll go put that filter back in. Okay, pop this filter back in place. There's a larger port and a smaller one. This is where the O-ring should have been, but there wasn't anything in there that came out. Pops into place. Just going to take a rag and run it along the mating or sealing edge. I sprayed down this valve body or whatever with brake clean just a few minutes ago. And now I believe I'll go get the pan and set it back up in place and get a couple of bolts in there. Looks like the gasket stayed in place. Well, you can see what I'm doing here, so I'll just finish buttoning these all up and then torque them up to the proper specs. Bring you back when we're back up top. Just thought I'd show you this. This is a really tight fit, almost impossible to get in, so I took an angle grinder and cut these back a little bit, and you see where there's a top tab here. I took that tab off and a little bit more as well in order to get it to fit between the exhaust system and to clip back on the side of the transmission. You do not want to leave this off. Make sure that you do replace or put it back in place, because it's what protects the side of the transmission from the exhaust heat. Anyhow, I'm going to climb under and pop this back into place. 110mm bolt or nut, and then we'll top off the transmission fluid and see if it shifts. So I got about 4 liters out of the drain pan. So I'll put about 3.5, 3 3/4 liters back in, and then fire it up and let it warm up and see where it sits. So rather than bore you with watching 4 liters get poured in, I'll just bring you back when I've got it topped up and fired up and running, and we can check it. And this particular transmission calls for Mercon 5 or Mercon V, so that's what I'm putting in. Well, I just ran it down the highway 15 or 20 minutes, drove it through town a little bit. Oil's a little pinker than it was, so I guess that's a good sign. I'd say it's good. So it looks like about 4 liters in the pan. It does shift a lot better. Doesn't seem at this point to be as clunky when I leave a stoplight or whatever. So yeah, we'll see what the future brings. Alrighty. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.
There is